Thanks for letting me know, by the way. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you letting me know, Sam. Thank you. So, my daughter and her boyfriend got me a real nice Borne wireless mic, and sometimes it seems a little tricky. You need to kind of get it plugged in. Hi, Tim. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, sometimes I've noticed that if it doesn't plug in just so, it doesn't seem to go through. Thank you so much. Okay, let me rewind and get started again. Welcome to the Good Life Meditation for today, the 8th day of July 2025. This is a personal diary video that I do every day at about 5:30 a.m. I do this particularly as a self-aid to help me to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone, so that I can more readily apply these to my life. So I'll be doing two main things over the course of this. Reflecting on the last 24 hours to see where I had moments where I could have done better or where I did well, and also looking forward to the current day to see how I can make the next 24 hours of good utilization of time. I'll also throw in there a recollection of the 8 objectives of my creed and one of the principles. But first, let me say welcome to new subscribers to the channel. It's great to have you here. Just to let you know that this is not a Japan video, other than what you can see of Japan over my shoulder here, this foggy summer day. It is, by the way, for long as we're talking about Japan, just check the temperature and barometer, or check temperature and humidity gauge. It is 28 degrees Celsius right now and just below 90% humidity. So this will change. The humidity will start dropping soon and that temperature will start rising. It's going to be an interesting one, another hot one. Okay, with Japan in the rear view mirror now, let's get started on looking at the last 24 hours and the coming day. So I do have my notes here. In the last 24 hours, I had a number of moments. No, so I talked about this being a journal or a diary, so to speak, but it's not the kind of diary where I do, dear diary, I woke up and had this for breakfast, and then I went out and saw a movie, and then I met and had coffee with my friend. It's not that kind of diary. The entries that I make here are to note the moments where exceptional things happened. By exceptional, I mean where life didn't go as I expected or planned, and I either handled that really well or I didn't handle it very well. If I handled it well, then I want to make note of what it was about my life carriage. By life carriage, I mean how I was moving into that moment, what inertia I had, what frame of mind I had that allowed me to handle that really well. Or if I didn't handle it well, what was it about the same life carriage that I could change to do better? Namely, what could I apply from my principles and objectives that could help me to do better? So yesterday was a strange day because it was a very, very full and rich day. Why is that strange? Well, I haven't really had full and rich days in the last 6 months. That's strange, Kurt. You've been free for the last 6 months. What the hell have you been doing with yourself? Well, yeah, I've been free, but I've been attending to necessary things that have come up by way of the life that my wife and I are trying to establish. There's been the latitude of freedom has been limited. We've been doing things to meet particular goals, like finding and buying and renovating a place to live, getting established with things like a driver's license, routines, getting established with the community. All good and interesting things for sure, but not necessarily the way that the things that I wanted to do in my life. I mean, I want to do these things, but the routines that I want to build. Yesterday felt like a day beyond that. It felt like a day where I was kind of, there goes my clock, at odd times. a day where I was really exercising this newfound freedom in the ways that I wanted to. That's, I guess, freedom. So my note, my one and only note here was from yesterday was, I keep a notebook throughout the day, was, and I tend to have, this is also really just a kind of little side note. I've been doing these notes for a long time. My notes have become very sparse and perfunctory over the last 6 months since I've retired. I typically have just one entry every day. It used to be I would have, like, a good half page or full page of entries every day long, all day long, but that's because so many things are happening all day. Yesterday's simple note is a model day, how I'd like to live. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and review what yesterday looked like, because if I noted that yesterday was a model day, then what does a model day look like for me? Well, I was up early, 4 a.m. From 4 a.m., I was hard at work, working on the previous day's Retiring in Japan video, which has reemerged in season 3. I'm 6 months into Retiring in Japan. I'm already on the third season of the thing. Why have I got 3 seasons in? Well, the seasons capture the character change of this retiring experience. The first, season was the build-up. The second season was the transition and to Japan. And now the third season is the restart of this series after I had ostensibly given it up, thinking I had nothing more to say, but realizing, mainly due to the fact that people, reached out to me and said, keep it up, Kurt, even if it's just your day-to-day experiences, keep it up. And I decided to reboot the Retiring in Japan series with that in mind. My wife was the one that really pushed me over the edge on that one. We were out for coffee one day at our favorite coffee shop called Kanohi, which means every day. And she reminded me, Kurt, Kanohi, why don't you just make the Retiring in Japan series a Kanohi season, a season of everyday vlogs, sharing the experience of the day-to-day. And that observation and suggestion from Yumiko is the thing that really allowed me to kickstart it, because I stopped making the Retiring in Japan series because I felt like I had nothing new to share relative to the experience of retirement. Sure, big things were still happening, but they were so significant. They were like seasonal changes, not daily weather changes, that they didn't seem worth a daily vlog to note. So, but changing it to a Kanohi diary, an everyday diary, liberated me from the need to feel like I had to have big things to report every day. Kind of like this one, right? I do this video every day, but I don't go into this. I don't start these videos thinking that I've got something big to share. And I simply have a handful of notes that I review that somehow seems to be of interest to some people, and it certainly is hugely significant to me. I might come back to that in just a moment. So spinning back around to the Kanohi vlog, the daily Retiring in Japan video, and the note, a model day. I woke up in the morning yesterday and I began to execute a series of very useful and interesting activities leading up to the release of yesterday's Retiring in Japan video, the execution of this video, the going out into the community to participate in radio exercise, Radio Taiso, with my neighbors, which is really a good thing because we talk, we walk, because it's about 3 or 4 blocks up around, as far as blocks go in Japan. So I have to walk through the neighborhood, and when we're done, we walk back with the neighbors with a little collection of oldsters, and we talk about the neighborhood as we walk back. Great opportunity for me to practice my Japanese, use and facilitate my Japanese. Coming back, I had breakfast with my wife. While I was doing that, I listed an antique item in my store, and I prepared for the day, which was going to be an adventure day. Monday, last couple of weeks have been adventure days, where an adventure day is defined as a day where I'm going to take little Rudy and we're going to take the car and we're going to go off and do something in the mountains and spend half a day or longer exploring. Turns out that old guy that I used to be, softypapa 1.0, still is fully capable. It's like an old jalopy, an old 1970 Camaro that's kept in the garage under a cover, a tarp, that brush the tarp off, charge the battery, it still starts up and drives around. Those old bones still function. And I can still do it. I can still do all those things that I used to do. They're just done under the auspices and motivation of a different life paradigm, right? Now, the day unfolded very nicely yesterday. Rudy and I went out. We went out, but there were some things that happened that were of particular interest. For example, we didn't go very far away. We drove about 15 minutes into the mountains that direction to visit an old house that I saw listed for sale, that I wanted to, just because I'm curious. It's something I like to do. I'm not looking to buy another house necessarily, but we wanted to see it. I wanted to see it and then make a video about it for the Abandoned Japan series, and then wrap a Retiring in Japan episode around that. That was the idea, that the adventure would be like a grain, a nugget in a clam that could then foment a pearl around that. So I could create two things. I would come out from that video with an Abandoned Japan episode of that house, and an experience throughout the day that I could then call Retiring in Japan, an episode. And all of that went exactly as I had hoped, including little adventures that looked like walking in Japan, little episodes of video clips that felt like Lyle's Brother videos. And then a good deal of just normal day-to-day living that felt like the good use of time. I should have probably made a note here of something that did happen that was of interest, that was noteworthy, but I didn't make note of it because I was driving, but now I remember what it was. Here it was. So put this under the note of my usual reflection on the last 24 hours. I drove 15 minutes with Rudy in the Jimny out into the mountains to visit a house. I had to find the house. I found the house. I got ready to pull over and park and get out and explore, and I realized that I had forgotten Rudy's leash, which means that I can't walk him. Now, that's a problem, because if I'm going on a little hike with the dog, I can't carry him the whole time. I can, he's a small dog, but it's too hot to be carrying him, and it's too hot to let him walk too long. So it's got to be a balance of both. Got to always mind the temperature of the ground as well to make sure it's not too hot on his feet. Anyway, I realized that I couldn't proceed, and my mind immediately, I felt the emotion rising, like, ah, crap, I forgot the leash. But I used #Temperance I didn't even really need to apply it. I didn't even need to think about it. It didn't even get to here. I saw it coming, and it's like reason kicked in, #reason, and said, well, Kurt, there's two options here. One, you can carry Rudy around if you want, or you can drive back to the house and get the leash. Well, I guess there's a third option. You could morph this into something else, but not really. I didn't even want to do that. So I immediately chose option number 2, drove back to the house, got the leash, and headed back. But the interesting thing to note was the way that I handled that instantaneously. I didn't need to press down the emotions of an adventure turned into a misadventure, an adventure gone wrong, this perfect day that I had planned out, not going perfect. It's like I've had so much practice now with life going the way life does, and knowing that life typically doesn't go the way we planned, as the old saying goes, man plans, God laughs, that it's no longer something that I even need to attend to. It's just something that just is handled. There was another instance that I didn't plan to talk about that I will mention in just a second, that I told you I'd talk about death, so it's coming up. I think I told you that, right? I may have done that. The mic was out earlier. I may have mentioned it before the mic went out. So just be warned, and heads up. If you're new to this, this is a personal video. I do talk about sensitive subjects. I can talk about anything I want. It's my personal journal. I almost every day talk about death, and it makes people uncomfortable. So heads up, that's coming. I'm going to talk about that. Anyway, back to that point about what happened. Two things were of note. One, the way that I, almost without hesitation, it was like, and I've used this analogy before, it's like someone that really practices karate moves, and then suddenly a circumstance happens and the moves just unfold. You don't even have to think about it. That's what's coming of, I've been practicing my good life creed for 8 years now, every day, putting it into practice, thinking about it through this exercise, this video. And it's become part and parcel of who I am. The things that are important to me to help me achieve the objectives of making good use of time, of being ready to die, of, of living a virtuous life, of maintaining my balance. These are all, I should put hashtags in front of all those terms. They're becoming very automatic. And if this sounds like it's self-congratulations, hey, this is my journal entry. I can do that. I can write in my journal and say, "Dear diary, yesterday was a hell of a day. Really had things under control." That's fine. It's my diary, after all. If you watch these enough, you'll see that I talk about the other stuff just as readily. The stuff that relates to me failing or falling flat on my face, that happens just as often. Although it's happening less often now. Well, the reason, it's interesting, the reason, another little aside, the reason I think that it's happening less often is that I'm not in a circumstance where I'm put in a position of falling on my face as often, right? Being retired, being free, being able to do what I want pretty much every day has changed the calculus of things. It's changed the circumstance of things. Tim, if you're out there, can probably relate, being also retired. We're simply no longer in the milieu, right? We're simply no longer in the midst of it all. Although that is a double-edged sword if there ever was one, because no longer being in the milieu means that we're no longer exercising those critical skills, and we can easily fall into a rut that's a very dangerous rut to get out of. But let me spin back around, and I promised to talk about death. Something else did happen yesterday that surprised me on a couple of fronts. So I got a phone call in the afternoon by someone that's close to me here in Japan. And that person was in tears. And sitting here, was about half hour before dinner, sitting here on the balcony. And someone mutual to us, an important person in both of our lives, has been put into the hospital with cancer and will be dead soon. Now, we knew this was coming, so this wasn't a surprise. But my friend contacted me because they were very emotional and they wanted to talk to somebody. We knew it was coming, but then the hammer blow of the news that they're in the hospital, they're not coming back. It's like beyond hospice. It's the end. So they reached out to me to talk, and we talked. We had a good talk. Now, I'm not the best person to talk with those things about. I'm not readily moved to emotion when it comes to things like death. I guess what I was just say is, let me just put it slightly different way. If you come to me with the terrible news that someone we know is going to die and you're in tears, I'll offer you a shoulder to cry on, but I'm not likely to cry with you, if you know what I mean. Death doesn't really seem to move me much anymore. And that surprised me as well. I was surprised. I've always been like that. Death has always been, even before I began to really approach my own death and prepare for my own death. Even before then, death has always been just kind of a matter of fact and something to be ready for and something to be prepared that others are going to die, and we go out at differential times and sometimes in surprising and horrible and terrible ways, right? So I guess maybe it's because I linger on death every single day that it does this, that I'm not the best. So I probably wasn't the best person for my friend to offer solace. I did my best, but I wasn't the best person for that. But let me get back to the point. Okay, again, this video is not a Dear Diary where I'm recounting events. What I'm interested here, and as terrible it is that this mutual acquaintance, I wouldn't go so far as to call them a friend, this person that's dying. um, more like a colleague. Apart from the fact that it's very terrible that this colleague is dying and will be dead soon, let's put that where it belongs, in a place to be considered and respected. Apart from that, remember this, I keep giving this caveat because this is sensitive territory. This effort, this video is not about that. I'm not making this video to share that story or to talk about that person's life or their death. What I'm interested in is finding out how, and this is going to sound selfish, because it feels like now that I've mentioned that someone in my life is dying, I feel like, the right thing to do would be to spend 10 minutes or more talking about that person's life. But that's not what this video is about. I did that yesterday with my friend on the phone. I didn't talk about any of this stuff with my friend. He knows this stuff. He knows that this is the stuff that I'm interested in, but I don't talk about this kind of stuff. Not with the person that's grieving immediately. Let me circle it around a different way. This is not the first time in the last couple of years that death has made its approach and near approach to me. It's been at least 3 people in my relative close sphere have gone in the last 2 years. And in all 3 cases, the experience of me going through their death, of participating in that, has been exactly the same. And I'm going to instead of to try to explain this, because I can't find a good way to do this. I'm striving to find a good way to do this that doesn't make me sound like an insensitive, heartless ass. Like I don't have any feelings or I don't have any emotions, and that's certainly not the case. It's just that I have changed into someone who approaches this differently, and I can't alter it. It's like when this person brought this, when they called me yesterday and they told me, there was a piece of me that wanted to like switch on a change of who I am, and then, bring forth some tears and, go through that same empathetic human bonding over the fact of this person's death. But that's not who I am anymore. So instead of trying to couch this in my own life and explain it, I'm going to instead turn to the story of Stelbo, and I know I'm saying his name wrong. Stelbo, who was a Greek Stoic, and there's a story told among Stoic scholars about when Stelbo's city, and again, I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I looked up how to pronounce his name correctly, and it's one of those names that I just can't seem to say right, so I'll say Stelbo. I looked up, so the story of Stelbo goes like this. Stelbo was a Stoic. Stelbo had a wife and children, and a successful business in his city, in his Greek city, until the conqueror came. And the conqueror, and Stelbo had some fame in both Greece and abroad for his Stoic studies, his Stoic life. And if you know anything about Stoicism, one of the tenets of Stoicism is to recognize what is and what is not within the scope of our control, and to boil it down to a fine point, to recognize that the main thing that is within our control is how we choose to react to the world around us. Knowing, and this is, again, hearkening back to one of my principles, because a lot of my principles and objectives were built off of what I learned from studying Stoicism. One of my objectives is the objective of recognizing true limits and true opportunities. So a studied, practicing Stoic will recognize what is within their control, and then exercise control over the one thing that they actually do have some measure of control over, which is how they respond to the world. So keep that in mind. The conqueror arrived at Stelbo's city, and laid siege, destroying the city utterly, including Stelbo's home and business, killing Stelbo's wife and his children, and burning everything to the ground. The way that the story is couched and pictured, we envision a scene where the city is in flaming ruins. The conqueror with his generals is outside the gates. And out of the flaming ruins comes Stelbo, the Stoic, stumbling into view of the conquering leader, who summons Stelbo to him, tells his soldiers, bring that man here. And Stelbo, who has lost everything, he's seen his wife and children slaughtered, his business and his home burned, coming away with nothing but whatever's on his back, is dragged before the conqueror, who looks to Stelbo, the famous Stoic, and asks, Stelbo, what have you lost? Stelbo responds, and this is the line that has been echoed through time, whether it's true or not, whether this is a story or whether it's based in reality, that has always echoed in my mind. Stelbo looks up at the conquering general, conquering leader, and says, after losing everything, he says, Sir, I have all my goods with me. The conqueror turned to his generals, and he said, though I have been victorious today, Stelbo has conquered me. Now, that attitude that Stelbo has, recognizing Stelbo's limits, there's nothing much he could have done about the conqueror and his army. There's not much he could have done about the laying siege to the city. All of these things were beyond Stelbo's control, beyond his limits. What he does have control over is how he uses his hashtag reason to assess the world, and how he then chooses to respond to what happens within the scope of his capability. And maintaining his reason and composure, and being able to address the conqueror, to let the conqueror know that although you have taken everything from me, my entire home, all my family, my business, my community is gone, I, Stelbo, still have my self-control, my ability to reason, and my ability to make composed decisions and replies in the face of adversity. That's a model Stoic response to the adversity of life. Now, how does that relate to what happened yesterday with my friend's teary call to let me know that someone that we both knew was headed for death? Like I said, this wasn't new. When I first learned, which is a couple of months ago, I was a little more shocked. But I knew this was coming, and my friend knew this was coming too. So, we both, I guess that's the reason my response was more Stoic than anything else, because I had braced myself. I had thought about it in advance. I knew when I learned that my acquaintance, so to speak, my coworker, my colleague, had cancer and would likely be dead soon, stage 4 at the time. There is no stage 5. You know what's coming in almost every case with stage 4. I had time to prepare. And I'm not proud of that fact. It's not like I look at that and say, hey, Kurt, look, I overcame my emotions about this person's impending death and look at me. No, it's not that at all. It's just that I think I've created a circumstance for myself in life where life's going to have to do a lot, get up a lot earlier in the morning to ambush me anymore. Now, relatively easy to say when it's just big talk. And I've been offered this observation, call it a criticism if you want, in the past from these videos. People say, well, Kurt, yeah, sure, you prepare for death every day, but let's see what happens when it really comes. And that's a fair criticism. That's a very fair observation. when it comes, if I don't fall over suddenly and die, and I have a little time to think about it, and especially if it's a lingering, painful death that's coming, we'll see how I do. I don't know. Maybe I'll dissolve into a puddle of emotion. Maybe I won't go well at all. The best thing I could, but I can't apprehend that. I can't anticipate that anymore. I can't rehearse that, right? The best I can do is go over the facts of the matter, the potentials, and try to prepare myself as best as possible. The closest that I'm able to come without actually rehearsing death myself, with actually experiencing the antecedent steps to it, is to, and I'm not saying that this is what I'm trying to do. I'm not looking for opportunities to prepare for death. But when it comes, like it did yesterday, I can look at that and say, well, look at that. Pity about my friend. Of course, first and foremost, pity about my friend. Horrible thing. But this is a very rare opportunity also to examine life and to examine my own readiness for death. And I find it very interesting, unsettling even, and I am confident that my friend on the phone yesterday, we didn't say this, we didn't go there, we didn't talk about this. I am confident that they probably came away from the phone call unsettled. I don't think they'll see this video. If they do see this, let's talk about it if this is the case. Unsettled by my response. And I didn't intend it to be this way, but I felt like my response yesterday was a lot like Stelbo's, I'm emotionless, I have my goods with me. I guess there was a lot in that. I didn't even have that in my notes. I didn't have it in my notes because it was too, well, I didn't have it in my notes because it happened late in the day. I was a little overwhelmed by it, and I didn't think to add it. And I didn't see anything noteworthy in it at the moment either. And I didn't want to just bring up the fact of somebody's death just to go over that. But I'm glad that I had a chance to think about it. So I've covered the last 24 hours. And I've done that part. So let's go over the creed. If you didn't already figure out, I wrote a book. This is not a plug. Well, maybe it's a plug. It's called Going Alone. You don't have to buy it. You can find it for free at goingalone.org. I created that website specifically to provide a vehicle for anyone that wanted to refer to the book or read the book without needing to buy it. You can buy it if you want. Anyway, I do this exercise every day, like I said, for for my own personal reasons, so that I can practice what I outlined here. So in the chapter titled The Good Life, nod to the Stoics, I have 8 objectives. And every day at this point in this exercise, I go over all 8 of them. And I do it either quickly or slowly as I see fit. At the bare minimum, I simply have to name each of the objectives. If I want to, I can dig deep or as not as I want. Here we go. The reason I do this is like tuning a compass, tuning or aligning, what's the way to say it? Calibration. I'm calibrating myself at the start of the day in the direction of my values. And it really has an effect. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that anyone adopt my values, but I can tell you this, after 8 years of applying these values, they really have had an amazing effect on me. They're not necessarily my own values. Like I said, I largely leverage these from Stoic teaching. But you're welcome to them. Number 1, the first objective is to make sure that I'm ready to die. This means that I need to make sure that my affairs are in order, that my relationships are in good shape, and that my life's work is in a clean state, if not complete. And they are. I can answer yes to all 3 of those. My second objective is to make good and effective use of my time, to make sure that my time isn't wasted today. I have 24 hours ahead of me before I do this again. And when I look at tomorrow's notes, look back at today's notes, I want to ask myself, did I do a good job? my one note for yesterday was that I had a sale that I needed to ship, and I shipped it. That went well. So good use of time is the second objective. Number 3 is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. That means that I spend some time working on the principles and objectives in the book, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. 4 is to cultivate good emotional reactions so that I respond well when things get difficult. And boy, I responded well yesterday when I realized I didn't have the dog's leash. And I responded well also when I found out that my friend was indeed not just dying, but on death's bed, in his deathbed, literally in his deathbed. Seems strange to be looking at my own response in that circumstance, but that's the purpose of this exercise. It's not that I don't care about my friend. It's not that I'm not thinking about that. That's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is to see how I'm applying my values to the challenges of my life. And hearing about that a friend is dying is indeed a big challenge. Number 5 is to perform good actions relative to my creed. Number 6 is to recognize my true limits and true opportunities so that I, like Stilbo, know what I can and can't do. Number 7 is to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, just like I'm doing right now. And number 8 is to keep my balance. Now, before I go on to today's exercise, to today's plan, I do want to make one more note that I talked about yesterday that I think is worth repeating again. Something else that's significant and being noted by both my wife and I, and Tim, if you're out there, you noted it as well yesterday, is the way that stress has fallen away. And it took, just want to make a note of this, it took about a half a year for the great and overarching stress of my 40-year adult life since university to finally begin to dissipate away. It's been a high level of stress for 40 years. And this is a really interesting experience. And I noticed it more yesterday, especially like, for example, when I forgot the dog's leash and I just simply turned around and made a decision to turn around and go get it. And there was no stress about it. It's not like, because in the past, when I was having an adventure, I felt like the adventure was something beyond a relief from something on the side from the stressful life that I was living as a parent and an employee and as a spouse. And since that stress is largely gone, it's like driving out to the countryside to visit a house, or just standing here in the dim sunrise, or doing whatever, is all relatively the same. Just wanted to point that out. Oh, I forgot to read one of the principles. Yesterday I read, I think I'm near the end. I read Nothing is Enough. This next principle, which is principle number 34, second to last, is the principle of fun. Yeah, believe it or not, I can try to be a fun guy. The sub-principles, and it's principle right there, the sub-principles are hope and retrospect. And there's a quote here from the Bible. Then I commended mirth, because a man hath no better thing under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes 8:15. Ecclesiastes has a lot of stuff in there that'll kind of makes you scratch your head and go, am I reading the Bible? Especially, I've had this one, Ecclesiastes 9. Oh my gosh. You want to read a part of the Bible and scratch your head and go, am I still reading the same book? Read Ecclesiastes 9. Here we go, the principle of fun. Along the way, we might become overly focused on the pursuit of living well, such that we neglect to enjoy the fact that we are alive. Be gay, be jolly, have fun. Find friendship and community and family and things to do which might make us smile and laugh and sleep well and hard and with a smile on your face. Live such a life that the mortician must ask your heirs if they wish him to wipe the death mask grin from your face before the funeral service begins. bring to your death a good and happy life, as a warm, fading spark of light, and life glowing down into the seemingly infinite sea of darkness and gloom. Okay, so for the next 24 hours, I don't have anything to ship today. I do have an item I'm going to list. I'm going to list this beautiful antique Japanese hand mirror. Believe it or not, this is a hand mirror, probably from the Edo period. You polish this up, and a woman would keep this in her kimono sleeve and look at herself. So I'm going to list this in my store. This is gosh, I just love these items. And then Yumiko and I are going to take a trip we have some stuff to recycle. So we're going to take some stuff to the recycle center, and our community has a new recycle room where they can take stuff because sometimes people bring stuff to the dump that's really nice stuff. You know, the Japanese take good care of their stuff, and they bring stuff to the dump that you're going, what, you're throwing that out? Well, the municipality here has finally caught on to that, and they're like, maybe not. So they created a big room at the dump, and then you can you can dump off your stuff and then park your car and go into the room, and they're reselling stuff there that's lightly loved, lightly used. Instead of going into the incinerator, they resell it, and then they use the proceeds to fund city services. Great idea, city. So we have items to bring to the dump, specifically to donate to them if they'll take it, and also to do a little shopping, because we're working on our guest room, aka our daughter's room. Emily will be here this month. She was here in June. She's coming down in July, and she's coming down in August. It looks like she's planning to come visit every month. And other than that, I plan to spend some time in the garden. And that's it. Covered everything. And let's go over any comments. Humble. Hello, Humble. Hi there. Humble says, I hope you have a blessed day today. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful day as well. It looks so calm and chill. Must be nice therapy for the brain. I'm telling you, this place that we bought couldn't. I don't know that we could have possibly done better. It's like, and I won't go on and on, but yeah, it's a chill place. Kevin, hey Kevin, hello there. Penguin, hi Tim. I think the one thing to take on board when starting the retirement journey is it's a hell of a change and adjustment. I'm still adjusting at 27 months, Tim. I was talking to that same friend yesterday after we had our discussion about the death, and they were asking me, he was asking me how it is, because he knows that I've been struggling with it 6 months in. And I told him roughly the same thing that you just wrote there. I said, I think that it's a 6 month to a 2 year journey to find our way to the other side. And hearing, because you're basically 21 months ahead of me, Tim, and you're still adjusting at 27 months, and that means I should be expecting the same. Tim, do you ever get tempted to go back to work, I wonder? I mean, like at a part-time gig or something like that? I found myself yesterday, as good as the day went yesterday, I found myself yesterday kind of thinking, because I was driving around and I was seeing the guys, like the flagmen, and I met a foreigner that was working at 7-Eleven, like a young Caucasian guy, and I see foreigners, and I was thinking to myself, maybe I can do a part-time job or something like that, just to kind of ease my way into this new life. Or would that be not easing my way back, but relenting, like holding the door, not letting the door close on career? I wonder if you think the same thing. Tim says, what I didn't figure is trying to adapt a slow down life after work life. I still try and cram everything in a day, possibly that background of lack of sense of purpose. Interesting. Just getting that balance right, which takes some thought. Sam says, I hope that guy with cancer isn't Mully. No, it's not Mully. It's nobody you know. It's, but as long as you brought it up, the guy that called me was Mully. So it's a coworker, past coworker for both Mully and I. So Mully's okay. Although Mully was in the hospital for the last 2 weeks with an infection, but he's out now. He's doing good. Tim says, can relate to that, Kurt. The rut side of life for me relates to my earlier comment in trying to keep. Let me just back up a second. I'm sorry, Tim. I'm interrupting my reading of your comment. Sam and I have a shared community of geologgers. It's no one. It's no one from the JVlog community, Sam. It's nobody that's on the online or anything. Just a person in that shared life with Molly and I. Reading Tim's comment again. Sorry, Tim. Can't relate to that, Kurt. The rut side of life for me relates to my earlier comment in trying to keep over busy each day to counteract this. Sometimes find it's a tricky balance. Hmm. It is. Tim, I was telling my friend Molly yesterday, and would love to hear your thoughts on this. Also, it seems to me that, because most people retire in their 60s, so I think it's related to age. Whatever we bring in terms of the scope of our life, how wide the margins are of our life, whatever we bring into retirement, kind of like seems to ossify, it hardens and becomes our frontiers. So if we lived a broad, expansive life, both career and personal, going into retirement, and have large community of connections and friends, then I think we're likely to be able to maintain that going into retirement, which is simply the body and mind to begin to degrade down, but we have that. But I think the danger is that if we've lived a very narrow and constrained life, then when we enter retirement, it ossifies, again, to use that term, and we might have dreams of jumping the rails and going elsewhere. But it's really hard to do, because however think of it like a slot car racer, or a bus going through that famous spot in Japan where all the snow falls down and the bus keeps going, and then the snow keeps on rising, and after a while you've got a 40-foot wall of snow on either side. That's what living in a particular rut of life for all 40 years of our adult life does. I'm finding this is the case with me. I've been kind of walled in, hemmed in. Fortunately, I've lived a very broad life, I think. Not as broad as some, but so I'm kind of happy with my prison. But if you don't live abroad, if you postpone it all until, say, I'm not gonna have an expansive horizon to my life until retirement, that might be a challenge. Mm. Sam says, that's fine with the crying thing, Kurt. I'm the same way. Once a couple people started dying around me each year, it's just like a thing now. I'm sorry to hear that people are dying in your sphere as well, Sam, but I appreciate, because I know you're a sensitive guy, I appreciate knowing that someone who is sensitive also is experiencing, I guess it's in a way we kind of have to harden ourselves a little bit as well, right? Sucks, but as long as you tell them this, sorry, but I'm not the best person to offer solace, you can't really let them hold any animosity against you. Yeah, no, actually, I've told Molly that before, and I've told Molly as well, and this is the absolute dead truth. I've told Molly before, I'm not a good friend, and he knows that, and I'm not a good friend. I wrote a book called Going Alone, right? I mean, so it's not just that I'm not the best person to talk about with, to confide into over when you want solace. I'm also not a very good friend. Sam says Tokyo Dude died in May from lung cancer. Yeah, I caught up on that, and I'm aware that was tricky. That was a tough one. Got a family as well. Mm. Kevon, actually, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It sounds to me like you are wondering how it really affects you. Maybe. I don't know that I necessarily understand, though, that point. Evelyn, I have read your other books too, so I know that your experience with death goes way back and is very, very deep in its own way. That's true. My whole book series were kicked off with death, didn't it? Thank you for reading all my books, Evelyn. I really appreciate it. Tim says, on the stress side, it took me around 6 months into retirement once I had got around all the change after working life and the guilt I initially felt not working anymore, which I really didn't expect. Tim, interesting. I haven't felt too much guilt, but it's interesting. 6 months in, and the stress is starting to fade with me too. I wonder. I mean, it's interesting to see the commonalities between us. Okayama Ray, don't know what this. I don't know what no stress feels like. Stress stresses me to think about a life without stress. Well, I would say, Okoyama Ray, that it's a life without stress. It's just a different type of stress. It's like having it's not having stress of the career was like having a klaxon siren constantly ringing all the time, to the point that you don't even, you're not even cognizant of it or aware anymore. It's just this background, friggin' noise. And after 40 years, it's just there. And then suddenly someone turns it off. There's other stresses. Tim will relate to this. There's other stresses, different types of stresses. But at least that friggin' siren stopped. Tried some volunteer work 3 months in, but I feel I'm probably done with work, to be honest. Yeah, people keep telling me to do volunteer work. I don't want to do volunteer work. I do stuff that kind of looks like volunteer work that I don't really talk about, but not the same. Because I don't want to be a part of I don't want to be a part of an institution or organization or hierarchy again. Evelyn says, exactly, and mine is philosophy. Says Evelyn. And Tim says, I think you've lived a broad life before retirement. I think if you've lived a broad life before retirement, it does help. Like branches of a tree, it helps you put the feelers out, so to speak. Then being hemmed in, my eyes are going bad, hemmed in if you had to live a narrow life. Yes. Evelyn, I meant that studying philosophy is keeping me afloat mentally in retirement. Yeah. Studying philosophy, definitely a fruitful endeavor at any stage of life. Well, I've reached the end of the comments. Others from Sapporo J. Hi, Sapporo J. Hey, Kurt. Odd question, but how tall are you? I picture you are about 178 centimeters. I think that's about right. I'm 5'10", which I think is about that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and finish for now. I have about 7 minutes to make it up the street for morning exercise. Thanks for joining me, folks. Wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe. Take care.